Most people think the first 60 seconds of meeting someone are harmless. Small talk, a handshake, a first impression. But with the wrong person, that first minute is not harmless. Because while you are trying to decide if you like them, they may already be deciding what they can do with you. Not because you are weak, not because you are naive, but because nobody ever taught you how fast some people start testing you. They are not holding a clipboard, they are not making it obvious, and they are watching tiny things. Can pity move you? Can urgency rush you? Can social pressure make you quiet? Can a compliment make you relax too fast? You think you are connecting. They are watching what works on you. They laugh when you laugh. They lower their voice when you lower yours. They agree a little too quickly, and that is where people get confused. Because one awkward signal means nothing. One strange moment means nothing. One odd smile means nothing. But a pattern with pressure is a fingerprint. And in this video, I want you to watch the sequence, because the first signal makes you feel safe. The last one shows you who they really are. The first thing to watch for is what I call the reflection trap. And the reason it works is simple. It does not feel like danger. It feels like chemistry. Maybe this has happened to you. You meet someone at work, on a date, at church, in a group, wherever. And within minutes, it feels like they understand you a little too well. You lean back, they lean back. You slow your voice, they slow theirs. You make a dry joke, and suddenly they have the same sense of humor. You mention loyalty, and now loyalty is their favorite word. You mention betrayal, and now they have a betrayal story too. At first, it feels good. And to be fair, sometimes it is good. Normal people connect through similarity. That is not the problem. The problem is when the connection forms too fast, too cleanly, too perfectly around the exact place where you wanted to be seen. That is when you slow down. Because a predator is not always trying to understand you. Sometimes they are trying to learn your baseline. How you talk, how you react, what makes you soften, what makes you explain yourself, what makes you trust. Then they slide into that shape. That is the trap. They do not need to build a personality from scratch if they can borrow yours long enough to lower your guard. And once they know what makes you feel safe, they can use it. That is why the smile matters. Not just the smile, the timing of it. Watch for that strange mismatch. The mouth performs warmth, but the eyes do not arrive with it. The agreement is there, but something in your body does not relax. You cannot explain it yet. You just feel it. That little alarm in your stomach. Most people brush that off. They say, maybe I am being judgmental. Maybe. But maybe your nervous system saw the gap before your mind could name it. The reflection trap is how they get in, but it is not where the scan ends, because once they make you feel safe, they start looking for your soft spots. This is where pity becomes leverage, and I want to be careful here. This is not about someone honestly sharing pain. Real vulnerability is human. Real vulnerability has timing. It has context. It does not force you to become responsible for someone you barely know. The probe feels different. You just met them and suddenly they are telling you something heavy. Their ex destroyed them. Their family never understood them. Everyone leaves them. Nobody has ever been as kind as you. And now before you even realize it, your nervous system starts working for them. You soften your voice. You reassure them. You give more than the relationship has earned. You might even share your own pain just to make them feel less alone. And that is the part they are watching. Not your advice, not your wisdom, your reflex. They want to know how fast pity can override your judgment, how fast your kindness opens the door, how quickly you become responsible for someone else's pain. That is when the conversation quietly stops being equal. You think they are opening up, but they are also learning what makes you soften. You think they trust you, but they may be testing how easy it is to make you feel guilty. And this is why the first no test matters later. Because pity makes no harder. It is one thing to say no to someone being pushy. It is another thing to say no to someone who has already positioned themselves as wounded. That is the setup. They are not just telling you a sad story. They are watching whether the sad story gives them access. So ask yourself this: do they share pain to be known, or do they share pain to move you? There is a difference, and you usually feel that difference before you can explain it. If pity does not work, they move to something smaller, more ordinary, and honestly, this is where a lot of people miss it. They start small, very small. Not because the request matters, because your reaction matters. They want to know what you will let slide when saying no feels a little too awkward. Maybe they interrupt you and expect you to start over. Maybe they ask a question that feels a little too personal. Maybe they touch your phone, your notebook, your bag, your time. Maybe they say we before there is any we. We should do this. We are the same. We do not need to be so formal. That is forced closeness. And because the moment is small, calling it out feels dramatic. So you let it go. And in that moment, they learn something. They learn that you would rather feel uncomfortable than make them uncomfortable. That does not mean something is wrong with you. It means something unguarded can be used. There is a difference. Most decent people get caught right here, not because they are stupid, because they do not want to be rude. They laugh off the invasive question. They answer when they do not want to answer. They explain when no explanation was owed. They give away tiny pieces of control just to keep the moment smooth. And again, this is not about awkward people. Some people are anxious. Some people misread social cues, and some people talk too fast, stand too close, or over-explain because they are nervous. That is not the same thing. One awkward signal is a fluke. A pattern with pressure is a fingerprint. The difference is what happens after you resist. An awkward person adjusts. A predator escalates. That sentence matters. An awkward person adjusts. A predator escalates. Because every small test is pointing toward the final one. The first no test. And before we get there, there is one signal people remember for years. Not because of what the person said, because of what was missing. You've probably seen this before. Someone says all the right words and they laugh at the right time. They say, "That must have been hard." They tilt their head like they care, but something is empty. The mouth is doing the job, the eyes are not. The sentence lands, but the empathy does not. A lot of people describe this as dead eyes. Eyes that do not match the smile. A cold feeling where your body notices something before your mind has an explanation. That does not automatically mean someone is dangerous. We have to be honest about that. A flat expression by itself proves nothing. Fatigue exists. Trauma exists. Autism exists. Anxiety exists. Some people simply do not show emotion the way other people expect. So do not turn one facial cue into a verdict. That is lazy. Look for the pattern and look for the pressure. Do they go cold only when you stop being useful? Do they seem blank when you are hurt but animated when they are winning? Do they look alive when they have control but empty when you need care? That is when the signal matters. Because now you are not just seeing a facial expression. You are seeing a pattern. The performance keeps moving, but the emotion behind it is missing. And that is why this part is so chilling. It shows you the mask while the mask is still working. But the first no test shows you what happens when the mask gets challenged. That is where the whole thing changes. Now we get to the signal the entire first minute was building toward. The first no test. And here is what makes it so useful. It is usually not dramatic. It is small. You say no to changing plans. You say no to a favor. You do not answer the invasive question. You do not laugh at the disrespect. You do not give the emotional reaction they were trying to pull out of you. And then you watch. Not the words, the transition. That is the whole test. Do they respect the boundary, or does the temperature in the room change? The charm drains. The smile tightens. The voice gets colder. The playful tone becomes punishment. The person who was just mirroring you suddenly starts correcting you, mocking you, pressuring you, guilting you, calling you sensitive, calling you selfish, acting wounded because you stopped being useful. That moment matters because it reveals entitlement. Not disappointment. Entitlement. Disappointment says, I wanted something, but I respect your answer. Entitlement says, I expected access, and your boundary is an insult. And that is why the first no test is so hard to fake. Because no removes the reward. No removes the supply. No removes the control. And when the reward disappears, the performance has to work harder. Sometimes harder than the mask can handle. Now you are not watching charm. You are watching what they believe they are owed. Your time, your attention, your guilt, your explanation, your silence, your compliance. And here is the part most people miss. The no did not create the problem. The no revealed the agreement they thought you had already made. They thought the contract was signed, not on paper, in your behavior, in the tiny moments where you laughed things off, in the moments where you explained too much, in the moments where you let small things slide because it did not feel worth the trouble. That is why the first 60 seconds matter. The reflection trap made you feel safe. The pity made you feel responsible. The small request trained you to adjust. The coldness showed you the performance underneath the emotion. And the first no exposed the entitlement behind the whole thing. That is the pattern. Not one weird smile, not one intense story, not one awkward moment. A sequence, a pattern with pressure. A scan that moves from connection to pity to compliance to coldness to punishment when you resist. So do not become paranoid. Become precise. Do not treat every awkward person like a predator. Do not turn every strange feeling into a label. Just watch the sequence. Do they mirror too quickly? Do they use pain to rush intimacy? Do they test small boundaries? Do their eyes stay cold while the performance continues? And most importantly, what happens when you say no? Because the first 60 seconds can show you how they enter. But the first no test shows you what they wanted from the beginning. The first 60 seconds show how they get through the door. But once they are inside your life, the signs become harder to spot. That is what the video on screen breaks down next. The scan shows how they get in. The next video shows what they do once they are already in your web.